Welcome to Every Folk Song, a podcast about every song in the Roud Folk Music Index. I'm Matt Aucamp, your guide through this continuum of song and story and the dense web of their changes through time. This episode focuses on Roud 2, The Unfortunate Rake. Stick with us. One day I decided to listen to every song in the Roud Folk Music Index, a catalog of songs and ballads in the English oral tradition organized by number. It turned out to be infinitely more complicated than I thought it would. So I started taking notes. Those notes turned into a blog that nobody read. That blog turned into a podcast that nobody listens to. Except you. Welcome. I'm Matt Aucamp. I'm no expert on any of this stuff. Up until a few months ago, I knew nothing of folk music. I still don't know much. But because I'm a crazy person, I've decided to take the time to research everything I can about these songs, and I want to share those things with you. Today, let's talk about The Unfortunate Rake. And there's a lot to talk about. The spread of this song family is one of the broadest I've found so far. I'm going to do my best to be comprehensive, but this may be a long one, and I may miss a lot. Let's start at the beginning.
What should I spy but one of my comrades, all wrapped up in flannel, the warm was then dyed.
The song The Unfortunate Rake arose in Ireland in the late 1700s. It was a moral ballad about promiscuity. A young man is found dying outside a place called St. James's Hospital, probably a reference to St. James's Hospital in Dublin, Ireland, established in 1727, where sat on the board of directors, interestingly enough, one Jonathan Swift, author of A Modest Proposal. You know, the short satirical story about eating babies. Anyway, the hospital still stands today. So the young man, the titular Rake, is dying of syphilis. He tells of the handsome young woman who gave it to him. He laments the fact that she didn't tell him sooner, for if she had, he could have treated it with, quote, pills and salts of white mercury. Apparently from like 1000 AD all the way up till 1908, syphilis was treated with mercury. There was a popular saying at the time, a night in the arms of Venus leads to a lifetime on Mercury, which is pretty clever, if a bit misogynist. The Rake in the song goes on to tell the narrator that he wants his funeral to be a happy affair, though, on the other hand, he wants people to know that he was cut down in his prime. He also says something gross about not wanting the maidens who carry him to have to smell him, and that's the story. I couldn't find too many songs specifically titled The Unfortunate Rake, because, as you'll learn, it's far, far, far from the most popular version of the song. So here's The Young Sailor Cut Down in His Prime, by Harry Cox.
As I was a-walking down by the Royal Albert, dark was the night, then cold was the day. Who should I see there but one of my shipmates, wrapped in a blanket far colder than clay. He asked for a blanket to wrap round his head, likewise a candle to light him to bed. His poor heart was breaking, his poor head was aching, for he's a young sailor cut down in his prime.
So over the next century, the song moved from Ireland to England in a few different ways. Supposedly, sailors took the song out to sea, as sailors were wont to do with folk stories and songs, and when they returned to England, they had The Sailor Cut Down in His Prime, which you just heard, and is sung here by Cyril Tawney.
As I was a-walking down by the Royal Albert, cold was the morning and dark was the day, when who should I see but one of my shipmates, wrapped up in canvas and cold as the clay. Then beat the drum over him, play the fife merrily. Sound the dead march as you carry him along. Take him to the graveyard for.
So you might already begin to notice the structural similarities. The songs tend to start with lyrics about, first, where the person was. In a lot of versions of The Young Sailor Cut Down in His Prime, it goes, "As I was walking down by the Royal Albert," a reference to the Royal Albert Hall of Westminster, England, a concert hall built in 1871 where eventually the Beatles and, more eventually, Jay-Z would play. Now, the song, of course, seems to have originated somewhere between 20 to 70 years prior to the opening of the Royal Albert, but I don't know what the lyrics were before that. I'm sorry. Maybe it just took a really long time to build? Anyway, the song then usually moves on to who the unfortunate rake of this particular version is and how the narrator knows him. A young sailor, my shipmate, in The Young Sailor Cut Down in His Prime anyway. They leave out the syphilis in this version, but they imply it, saying in the last verse that he spent a lot of time wandering along with the flash girls, which I guess was an old Irish slang term for girls who dressed well and were of dubious reputation. Slut-shaming, really. And then the song goes on to give sort of a list of instructions about the funeral, about who will carry him and her, about what sort of music will be played, sometimes about what to say to the mother and father, what to say at his or her funeral. It ends on a pretty somber note, and in a lot of the versions, especially some of the later versions, the subject of the song actually passes away during the song. Kind of morbid. So around this time in history, the Crimean War was happening. From 1853 to 1856, it was a confused and badly run war on both sides, with the British and French teaming up with the Ottoman Empire to defend against Russian invasion. It led to the Treaty of Paris, the legacy of Florence Nightingale, the innovation of modern nursing and wartime medicine, actually a bunch of medical advances. The reason for this being that the majority of deaths on both sides of the Crimean War were not due to gunshot wounds or cannon fire, but due to disease. With so many soldiers dying of cholera and typhus and dysentery and malaria, it's not really much of a surprise that the story of the unfortunate rake would enter people's minds. A story about a young person dying of disease, lamenting the fact that their life was lost so early. It's no stretch to imagine those who knew it absent-mindedly whistling it as they walked through the makeshift hospitals, full of rows and rows of young men in various states of disease. It's no stretch to imagine sad drink halls filled with men mourning their lost friends, telling stories of walking by and what those young men said to them. It's really no surprise to find that this gave birth to a song called The Soldier's Lament, or The Tarpaulin Jacket, or The Young Trooper Cut Down in His Prime, as sung here by Ewan McCall.
Morning, though warm was the day, when who should I see but one of my comrades, all wrapped up in flannel and cold as the clay. Then beat the drum lowly and play a fife slowly and sound the dead march as you carry me along. And fire your bundukes right over my coffin, for I'm a young trooper cut down in my prime. The bugles were playing, his mates were a-praying. The chaplain was kneeling down by his bed. His poor head was aching, his poor heart was breaking. This poor young trooper cut down in his prime, then beat the drum lowly.
But perhaps more interestingly, the war also gave rise to a different version. All you do is trade the man for the woman, and suddenly all these ideas of gender and sex come pouring out. The young girl cut down in her prime, or the unfortunate lass, first introduces a lyric that we'll see again and again, in which the dying subject, in this version, a young girl who had slept with a soldier and is dying of syphilis again, says, "I know I've done wrong." It's a song of true lament. She doesn't blame anybody but herself, and she regrets her decisions. She talks of shame and disgrace in a way that the man in the previous versions of the song never did. She asks for the clergyman or the preacher to come pray for her. Unlike the bold, if contemplative young men we've seen thus far, the young girl seems sad and scared. It's kind of a bummer, truly. Here's Eliza Carthy with The Unfortunate Lass, followed by Shirley Collins with The Young Girl Cut Down in Her Prime.
Now it seems has caused me to weep and lament, and had he but told me before. Mother, dear mother, come send for the clergyman, and send for the doctor to heal up my wound, and likewise my young man whose heart it did wander, so that he may see me before I'm put down.
Now, before we leave Europe and move on to America, there's one last kind of puzzling version of the song. But before we get into it, I want to show you quickly how the Young Girl Cut Down in Her Prime variation evolved. It's kind of amazing. That's Book of Sand in 2011. And behind us now is Dead Raven Choir in 2001. There's always some crazy outliers when you're following folk music, it seems, either musically or lyrically. And when I stumble over them, it makes hours and hours of research suddenly feel like a delight. And the black metal versions of Young Girl Cut Down in Her Prime are amazing examples of that. Just listen. So this next version is less funny or weird, but it's kind of interesting in its uniqueness.
All is to the tale of a poor Irish harper, and scorn not the string of his old withered hands, but remember those fingers, they once could move sharper to raise up the strings of his dear native land.
It's the Bard of Armagh, and while connections to the Unfortunate Rake song cycle are a bit tenuous, it came up enough that I felt like I had to reference it. Instead of being about a young person cut down in their prime, it's about an Old Bard, a reference to Bishop Patrick Donnelly, and was written in 1867. People often sing it to the tune of The Streets of Laredo, which we're about to get into, because they're kind of similar. They both include someone at the end of their life reflecting to someone else. But while one is about someone talking about their imminent death, Bard of Armagh is about someone talking about their childhood. I don't know. It's there, for what it's worth. Let's leave Europe and head to America.
As I walked out in the streets of Laredo, as I walked out in Laredo one day, I spied a young cowboy wrapped all in white linen.
Now, technically, Streets of Laredo isn't Roud 2. It's Roud 23,650. But I think that's only because it became such a massively well-known song. The name The Streets of Laredo you've probably heard before. It became the title of a Western movie in 1949, a Larry McMurtry book in 1993, a TV series in 1995, a Punisher story in 2001, a Brooklyn-based indie band in 2012, not to mention the 1973 movie Bang the Drum Slowly, which is a lyric from the song. It's been sung by Johnny Cash, Joan Baez, Willie Nelson, Burl Ives, Bing Crosby, Paul Westerberg, Roy Rogers. It was in the movie Brokeback Mountain, and in the TV series Deadwood. It's huge. That's probably why it's been given its own Roud number. But listen.
As cold as the clay. I can see by your outfit that you are a cowboy. These words he did say as I boldly walk by. Come and sit down beside me and hear my sad story. I'm shot in the breast and I know I must die.
Johnny Cash, obviously. It's the exact same song. Let's admit it. So I'm going to cover it here. I mean, there are some differences. For example, the cowboy in the song is not dying of syphilis or any other disease. He's been shot. He's bleeding out. Sometimes it's implied or outright said that it was cheating at cards that spurred someone into shooting him. Most times it's left up to the imagination. And his lament as the song goes on is that the life he's lived has led him here. The man he's narrating to is a stranger, but a fellow cowboy, as the dying man recognizes by his manner of dress. He gives them all the standard funeral instructions, including instructing them to lay sod over him, which I think they could have figured out themselves. But let's not mock the dead. He tells the singer to inform his mother, and also instructs him not to ever mention the name of the man who shot him, so his name won't live on. I guess the poor kid got his wish.
And I'm dying today. It seems pretty
Play the dead march as you carry me along. Take me to the green valley, there lay the sod o'er me. For I'm a young cowboy and I know I've done wrong.
So that version of the song is pretty self-explanatory. The song came over to America in the 1800s, made its way west, and all the sailor and soldier stuff got replaced by cowboy stuff. There's also the Cowboy's Lament, which is usually identical to the Streets of Laredo, and, well, this gem.
I went down to St. James Infirmary, and I heard my baby groan, and I felt so broken.
Somehow, as the Unfortunate Rake was pouring into the American West, becoming Streets of Laredo, it also settled down in Louisiana, in New Orleans, as a blues song called St. James Infirmary. The version we just heard was Bobby Blake. Other people have written much better pieces than I can do here about St. James Infirmary. The two I'd recommend are Sarah Vowell's Magical Mystery Tour that she wrote for Salon, and Rob Walker's Name That Tune on bestofneworleans.com. There are more, too. This is the version of The Unfortunate Rake that seems to inspire the most intrigue and curiosity. I think it's because of how haunting and creepy it is. I'm going to play a few verses from Louis Armstrong, and then I'm going to read an excerpt from Sarah Vowell's essay, where I think she explains the appeal pretty succinctly.
I went down to St. James Infirmary, saw my baby there, stretched out on the long white table, so sweet, so cold, so fair. Let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, she can look this wide world over. She'll never find a sweet man like me. When I die, I want you to dress me straight leg shoes, box back coat and a Stetson hat. Put a $20 gold piece on my watch chain, so the boys will know that I died standing pat.
This song gave me the shivers then, and it gives me the shivers now. Not just because it's a morgue scene, not just because of the cold body lying there on a table instead of a bed, but because of the chill of the man's words. Hearing it as a young girl, hearing it before I ever fell in love myself, it frightened me because of the way it shoots down the idea of love as a true possibility. If you need love in part to know you'll be missed when you're gone, what does it mean if your sweetheart stands over your icy corpse and, instead of wishing to rejoin you on some astral plane, fantasizes about impressing his buddies with a big dumb coin? The lyrics are puzzling and insensitive and eerie. It takes some of the lines from The Unfortunate Rake, applying a few to a man seeing his love dead on a table, but more to giving instructions for his own funeral, which, unlike the other versions, in no way seems like it's about to happen anytime soon by the lyrics of the song. And the melody is haunting, with its minor chords and its droning, undulating tone. There's a creepy little cartoon. I'll post a link in the show notes. You can look it up on the internet's most popular video streaming website, you know the one, by searching Betty Boop Snow White, starting about the 4-minute, 20-second mark.
Folks, I'm going down.
It's Cab Calloway, as a dancing, long-bodied, sad clown. He croons as he follows popular cartoon character Betty Boop. She lies in a glass coffin being carried by 7 bearded dwarves. It gets weirder, but I won't describe the whole thing. I will tell you that he turns into one of the creepiest cartoon ghosts I've ever seen at one point, and leave it there. The song is dark.
She will search this wide world over, but she'll never find another sweet man like me. Now when I die,
You could argue, I suppose, it's the second most famous of the branches of the Unfortunate Rake, as it's a pretty widely known Louisiana blues standard. It was copyrighted in 1929 by Joe Primrose, a pseudonym for Irving Mills, known primarily through his associations with Duke Ellington, but most people believe it was around before Mills nabbed the copyright. There's even record of it being published in a book of poetry by Carl Sandburg as The Gambler's Blues in 1927, 2 years prior, as noted by the aforementioned Rob Walker. Since then, it's been recorded by Louis Armstrong, Cab Calloway, Lou Rawls, house actor Hugh Laurie, Arlo Guthrie, Van Morrison, Count Basie, and Dizzy Gillespie, and dozens more. It's a good deal different from previous versions, but I think it's fair to say that it's a far cry more captivating. Let's just sit back and listen to a few, shall we? And then we'll wrap this thing up.
down in old Joe's barroom at the corner by the square. The drinks were served as usual, and the usual crowd was there. Now all night I went down to St. James Infirmary. What to see? Haven't seen my baby there. Oh, ran to lay out on a long white table. She was so cold and so cool and so fair. Let her go. Let her go. Oh, God bless her.
Take apart your bones and put them back together. Tell your mama that you're somebody new. Feel the breeze blow and tell them, oh, look out, here it comes. Now I can say whatever I feel like to you. Then get me 6 crap-shooting pallbearers. Let a chorus girl sing me a song. Put her in, hearts is what it's on this sweet race. Hallelujah, as we go along. Well,
That was the White Stripes, Van Morrison, and Arlo Guthrie.
Early one morning, past the St. James Hospital. Early one morning the month of May. When I looked through the window and I spied a dear cowboy. He was a dear cowboy, as cold as the clay.
So we've traversed the surface, at least, of the rich history that the Unfortunate Rake has. And I think it's fair to say that if it truly was based on a real person, he didn't die in vain. The inspiration that he spurned created a cultural ripple that spread out to peoples and cultures he couldn't even have began to imagine. There are dozens, maybe hundreds of versions of the song that I couldn't find recordings of or weren't significant enough to note. Some parodies, some apparently real songs, people taking the story of the dying boy and replacing those crucial details. Where he was found, what his profession was, what he was dying from, the elements that he wanted at his funeral, with inside jokes from their professions, or professions they were mocking, or real problems from the communities they lived in. He could be a bureaucrat dying from being smothered by red tape on the steps of the Capitol building, or some other glib thing. He could be a coal miner dying from black lung. He could be a barber, or a bartender, or a veterinarian, or a pirate, or a healthy tooth dying of tooth decay, or whatever. It's really versatile. Obviously, the idea of someone dying is universally relatable, but the way the song structure handles it maybe speaks to something more. Maybe its combination of heavy and light is how we want to handle death. We all want to be mourned and remembered, but at the same time, we don't want to think about how heavy death is. The character in the song asks you to make his death a merry occasion, at the same time as he wants you to know how young he was. It's just like how in movies, we're sad if our characters die, but we feel good if somehow they were honored in death. If the other characters in the story get to speak to them as they bleed out on screen. If they, in their last moments, get to reminisce or repent or make a dying request. And in real life, death just isn't that way. It usually ends in confusion or pain or chaos. Or it just ends with absolutely no build-up. Just sudden and unfathomable. The song also serves as a good warning of the horrors of war, the dangers of promiscuity, don't forget your Mercury, of the recklessness of drinking and gambling. We'll never run out of a need to warn people about lifestyle choices through song. That's half of gangster rap, after all. So while the Rake, unfortunately, died young, at least his story lived on. For centuries now. And probably centuries still. And syphilis or no, that's a pretty good way to go out.
Get 6 pretty women to carry my coffin, 6 pretty women to sing me a song. Get bunches of roses to hang round my coffin, roses to dead in the clouds as they fall.
Thanks to Steve Roud, the English Folk and Dance Society, and the Vaughan Williams Memorial Library, all for the existence of the index. And thanks to the following artists whose songs appeared on the program today. Sean McGuire and Roger Sherlock, The Crooked Jades, A.L. Lloyd and Alf Edwards, Harry Cox, Cyril Tawney, Ewan McCall and Peggy Seeger, Shirley Collins, Eliza Carthy, Book of Sand, Dead Ravens Choir, Marty Robbins, Johnny Cash, Sons of the Pioneers, Bobby Bland, Louis Armstrong, Cab Calloway, The White Stripes, Van Morrison, B.B. King, Arlo Guthrie, Tony Rice, Joan Baez and Bob Dylan, Count Basie and Dizzy Gillespie, and Alan Toussaint. If you've enjoyed any of the music I've played for you on the show, I suggest you look up those bands and their albums. You can find most of them either on any major music purchasing site or on their band's websites. For more information on The Unfortunate Rake, or Streets of Laredo, or St. James Infirmary, there are dozens of books and even more websites. Visit your local library or your local computer and type those names into something. Surely you can figure this part out yourself. Also, I want to give a shout out to the young Syrian hamster who's been chittering and chewing in the background of this recording. Sorry if the mic picked any of that up. I'm watching him for my 8-year-old son. His name's Donut, the hamster, not my son. And he's actually pretty adorable. Thanks so much for listening. You can find me at my full name, Matt Aukamp, MattAukamp, on any of the modern social networking sites. Well, most of them. You can find our blog at myroudjourney.tumblr.com. You can email me at mattaukamp@gmail.com. That's my honest, actual email account. I'd like to hear from you, truly. With compliments or criticisms, corrections. I probably got some things wrong here. Or just to let me know you're listening. I'd just like to know people are listening. And if you so choose, check back in 2 weeks, where we'll be talking about the song, The Sprig of Time. Take care, folks.
When I was a young girl, youthly pleasure. When I was a young girl, I used to drink out of the alehouse and into the jailhouse, right out of the barroom, down to my grave. Send for the man who disordered me. Send for the man who disordered me. I might have got shelter